Hey, Modern Love listeners. This is Wesley Morris. I host a show called Cannonball, and here to let you know that Cannonball is going to be going live at the Tribeca Festival this year, and my guest is going to be Cynthia Nixon. Yeah, that Cynthia Nixon. And we're going to talk about some great art about New York City. The show is Friday, June 12th at 6 p.m., and I will say it again, because, has so nice, you got to say it twice. Friday, June 12th at 6 p.m. You can get your tickets right now at tribecafilm.com/audio. That's tribecafilm.com/audio. Please come out. See me and Cynthia talk about New York City.
Love now and
Did you fall in love last night?
I love love was stronger than anything.
For the love.
And I love you more than anything.
There's still love. Love.
From the New York Times, I'm Anna Martin. This is Modern Love. I don't remember how this whole thing got started, but in high school, my group of friends, we were 7 girls, we would always joke about having a friend baby. This is obviously a baby that we raised together as friends. We'd talk about who would do the disciplining, who would do the spoiling, what qualities the baby would pick up from each of us, who would slack on parental duties. This was a joke, but also there was something real there for me. It was this vision of a future that even if I don't meet the right partner at exactly the right time, I could still be a parent. Today on the show, I'm talking to writer and biologist Joseph Osmundson. He's got a new book out called Spawning Season, an experiment in queer parenthood. And kind of like what I used to do, Joe and his best friend loved to joke about having a baby together someday. But when they got into their 30s, it stopped being a joke, and they decided to become co-parents together for real. Joe and his friend figured out all the practical details. They came up with a perfect plan, but they couldn't plan for the feelings that came up once they started the process. Feelings that put this family they were building together at risk of falling apart. Joe Osmundson, welcome to Modern Love.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Joe, I feel like a lot of kids grow up with questions about where babies come from. What a start to a conversation, right? But I will say you are different. You did not have a lot of questions about that. You had a lot of experience with pregnancy and birth from an early age. Can you tell me about that?
I actually got sent home from school because I knew suspiciously too much about the birds and the bees. It's true. Because my mother was teaching Lamaze classes at the time. And
Lamaze.
And they didn't have enough money to get a babysitter. And so I was sort of go along with her. And I earnestly believed at that young age that I had the very important role of teacher's assistant. I did not think that this was just because we didn't have a babysitter. I thought I was absolutely needed.
You're like, Mom has chosen me. Wait, how old were you when you started being teaching assistant at Mom's Lamaze classes?
Oh, man. I had to be pretty young, probably 6 or 7, because it was around kindergarten. And I remember I literally had to choose between continuing to be the teaching assistant, which, again, I thought was totally a real job, and keeping on with Boy Scouts. And guess what I chose?
I'm going to take a wild guess and say continue to be the teaching assistant at Mom's Lamaze classes.
1,000,000%. That's what I chose. And so if someone was there on their own for that week, I would play the partner. And I would get on the ground next to them. And I would breathe with them. It's sort of these, these he.
Yeah, please do it.
And it's repetitive, right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes like a mantra. There's physical touch. So you would rub their back, or if they wanted sort of to hold their hand gently. So it was all these ways of practicing being present for someone.
And caring and showing care. Yeah.
Nurturing.
Did it make you want to have a family, a baby of your own one day?
Well, that was never even a question. My family always had the assumption that we would have, that my sister and I would have kids. It wasn't an if, it was a when. And I think a lot of people that grow up in that type of environment might reject it, might be like, no, it's like,
right.
as a way to assert their individuality, might say, no, I'm not going to do that. But I just swam in it. I soaked it in. I think it was also a way for me to express how different I was than the other boys.
Tell me about that.
I lived in a town where boys were pretty violent to me. I was bullied, I was pushed, I was spat on as sort of a part of my daily existence. And so being soft and being nurturing and wanting to have kids and wanting to care for them, to give that all of those lovely childhood experiences of like gardening or sewing, of playing a game, of just that collective time spent, and like when I would go over to friends' houses, their dads would not be present, but their moms would like cook food or they'd be curious about me. They would ask what classes I liked or what book I was enjoying reading. There was this intimacy. I was able to be vulnerable. I was able to be my kind of nerdy, weird self. And so I always was drawn much more to the mothers.
God, I'm so endeared to little Joe. I mean, when you thought about, you say it wasn't even a question, just this like ancient, almost embodied knowledge that you would have a kid. You're saying you're drawn towards motherhood. So when you pictured having a kid, how did you picture your role in their life? Were you picturing yourself like I am mothering this kid?
Yeah, I was definitely a queer child, but I always was attracted to women as well. So I just always assumed, there weren't soft men back home. There weren't gay people. And so I just always assumed I would be with a woman and be a very tender dad, I guess. That my longing for motherhood or viewing myself as a mother was really just about that tenderness. And I really wanted to be, to cook with them. My mom had this really old pasta machine, and I just have these memories of coating every surface in flour. And I loved making a mess, but, was not generally allowed to. So it was like this time when you could roll these long sheets of pasta and coat everything in flour, and it'd be my mom and I in the kitchen. And that's what I wanted to do with my kid,
As you got older,
Yeah.
you moved out of your hometown, you went away to college, and basically right away, you meet the person who will become your best friend, this woman who will become your best friend, really even more so than best friend, who will become your chosen family. Can you tell me about her?
Yeah, I mean, it starts slowly, in the way that a lot of great friendships do, where you don't necessarily make plans to hang out. It's sort of like you're walking down the hall and you're like, oh, are you getting dinner? I'm getting dinner. And then you get dinner together. Yeah. And then soon enough, it was AIM at the time.
Yes.
And so you would AIM them like, oh, going to the dining hall. And then it built slowly over time. She was a woman and I was a man and I hadn't yet come out as queer. And she hadn't yet come out as queer. Everyone thought we were a couple. And I just wanted to shake everyone and be like, she's a lesbian. We were, come on, you know what I mean? It's like, but no one knew how to read us in that way. That the only way you could read the type of intimacy between two people was like that they were dating or that they had a crush on one another. And it was like, obviously no weird, just like, obviously going to be life partners, but not in a romantic way. And I might be just jumping ahead, but it was like early in this friendship that we started joking about having a kid together.
Do you remember the first time it came up?
It happens so frequently that like it's like what when's the first time you ever saw a raindrop? Like it was just like it was just so
Imagine
so
if I
like
had an answer
constant.
to that. Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of platonic best friends joke about getting married if they're both alone at a certain age, and that's a very if we're both single at 40, we're gonna get married. I've totally done that too, but for whatever reason, this best friend and I always joked about having a kid together. It was not, we'll get married. It was, we'll have a baby. It was 2006 or whatever, 2005, 2004. And our year was 2020 because it felt like so far off.
I mean, I really do this sort of joking, if we're both single, we'll get married. I've absolutely done that. Like, yes. And even actually, I remember with my high school friends, we had this sort of dream of like collectively having a baby. So I guess my question is like, it came up, you started saying this. Was it a joke? Like, what was the emotional undercurrent of this?
So it did start feeling purely like a joke or as a way of saying, I do want to build a life with you. Like that's what we were really saying. Because a baby is even more permanent than a marriage, And so it was really a way to say, this is a commitment even almost beyond love.
I'm in it with you.
I'm in it with you. Like at the end of every hangout, it'd be like 2020, having a baby, see you tomorrow.
And all your friends were like, just say goodbye, like
stop this nonsense. And
And
we
you were
would
like,
just absolutely not stop the nonsense. Like the nature of our friendship was absolutely never stopping nonsense. Nonsense forever.
When you talk about this baby that you would
Mm-hmm.
have with your best friend, did this baby have a name?
Yeah, I mean, my best friend came to visit me in my hometown, and my dad was regaling her with fish facts, as we do in the Pacific Northwest.
Of course.
It's sort of very important animal to the region, the Pacific salmon. So we just started calling her our little baby fish fry. And so a fry is a life cycle stage in the salmon life. It goes like from an egg to an alevins to a fry to a smolt to a par to an adult.
So I'm not going to keep that in my brain because that's
There will be a quiz later. So it's a baby salmon.
it's a baby
basically,
salmon
this
is
fry.
a fry.
Mhm.
Adorable. And so this baby, you were going
We
to
started calling her Fry.
baby fry.
Baby Fry.
When you graduated, like you said it was hypothetical.
Yeah.
How did that hypothetical baby, how did that baby fare after graduation? Would you still talk about
Every time.
baby fry? Wow.
At the end of every hangout, it was 2020 Baby Fry. And we would talk about it became more real slowly. It became more real slowly as I was not in the traditional partnership that I thought I would be in. And so it became more reasonable, more possible that we were the people who were, through all those boyfriends, through all those bad dates, who would I call at the end of it? But my best friend.
Yeah.
And I don't have an expiration date on my fertility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my best friend did. And so and I noticed this with a lot of my friends, women, at about 33 to 35, it starts becoming a really pressing question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the wall that she hit at that time.
Huh.
And so she was just like, if we're going to do this, it's time. It's time to do this.
Do you remember like a conversation where she came to you with this urgency that you're outlining and she said it's time to really do this? Can you bring me into that moment?
It wasn't yet urgency. It was just, I'm not joking. And what do you think? And, I was a postdoctoral researcher at the time, making $40-some thousand a year here in New York City. And I had this teeny tiny little apartment that was subsidized by the university I was working at. And I was standing in the little entryway and we were hanging out like we always do. And at the end of the hangout, it was like Fry 2020. And I think this was 2018 or 2017. So 2020 is no longer theoretical. It is a year in the future, not that far in the future.
Yeah.
And she just said, okay, but I'm not joking anymore. And how do you feel about this conversation actually becoming real and intentional?
Huh. And how did you feel?
I lost it. I just lost it.
In a good way or a bad way?
Good is not even a good enough word. It was just like something unlocked in me that was like, I think one of the things I learned through this whole process is sometimes you don't know how bad you want something until it starts happening. And so I was immediately like, I wanted to shout like, yeah, like, yes, like really like, but then I was like, no, but then that'll be a turn on. She'll get scared and she won't want to have a kid with me.
I'm not joking. If I'm like,
yes, like clicking my heels in the air. Like, so I was immediately like, I want this very badly. And, she had just started dating a woman who ended up becoming her partner not that much longer before this. And they were both in their mid-30s. So they had started having these conversations about, do you want kids? But I loved the idea of having a kid with not just two people because I had seen enough people parent with just two, and I know it is really rough. And so I just loved this idea of having more than two parents and having time where you could have a night on your own for quiet or for having drinks out.
Yeah.
But still be as much of a parent as in a sort of more quote unquote traditional situation.
It's so sweet to me because your brain's already going to yes, and it's going to be amazing to have more than one
Correct.
parent, and you don't
That's right.
scream yes, But you do say, what do you say in actuality back to
I
your
was
friend?
like, yes, absolutely. But I said I have to talk to my boyfriend at the time.
So you were dating
because
someone.
I was dating someone, we lived together. And again, I was like so financially precarious, even though I'd already finished my PhD and was working full-time as a researcher at a major university. But those positions are low paid. So I could not afford my life without living with that partner at the time. So it wasn't my decision to make alone.
And so tell me about that conversation. How did you bring it up to him?
Yeah, we were, he has a glass of wine. We're sitting on the couch, and I was like, oh, I saw my best friend, and she joked about having a kid, but I think it might not be a joke anymore. I think she wants to do it. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, like, how would you feel about co-parenting with them?
Okay.
And he just said, he was like, that's weird.
Okay.
That was the answer. I'm not doing that. That's weird.
Wow. How did that hit you?
It was like a little death. Like, it was just, this was in a period of like 4 hours, right? I'm like, la, 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 the day is just a normal Tuesday or whatever. And then I'm like so overjoyed at this possibility, at this utopic possibility of actually being able to make a kid in this amazing way. And then my boyfriend just says no. And I couldn't imagine life without him. I couldn't imagine life without him, not just because I loved him very deeply and I loved our life together, but I literally could not afford to live without him.
Huh. So where does that leave you in terms of baby Fry?
It left me in this place where I think I was subconsciously blaming my not being a parent on him, but I was making that choice. I could have said, I want to have a kid with my best friend so much. A lot of couples break up around wanting or not wanting to have kids.
Yeah. This is a big, this is an existential, as you've noted, decision. Yeah. So you could have pushed back. Yeah.
I could have just said it's a deal breaker for me. I'm going to have a kid with my best friend. I love her. But ultimately I wasn't brave enough. And I really, you mentioned that like, I love little Joe in the Lamaze class, and I do too. Like, I look back on so many versions of myself as a younger person, and I'm so proud of who he was and how he was himself, even when that self was, a little effeminate boy in a logging town who got the crap beat out of him. But I'm proud that that little kid was like that and was brave and was strong. And I, at that time, was not brave and I was not strong. I made what I think now was a cowardly decision to sort of.
I think you're being so hard on yourself. I think because to me, I hear what you're saying, but it also sounds like you loved this boyfriend so deeply.
I did.
And you're faced with kind of an impossible, do I make this real with my best friend, this dream we've had now for over a decade?
Yeah.
Over a decade. Or this person who's the love of my life. Like, that was where you thought your future was headed. Being the operative word, I will just say, because that relationship, that didn't last, right?
It didn't last. So maybe a year after that, he made the choice to move to London for a gig that he had booked. And so he walked out of our many-year-long relationship. And it was when he ultimately did leave, about maybe 3 or 4 weeks after booking the gig and deciding to move, my best friend was the only person in the neighborhood. And she came right to my apartment, and I was sitting there catatonic. Like, I think I was the grief or the shock. It wasn't even grief yet. It was just shock. I was too much in shock to even cry.
Yeah.
And I just remember saying, well, at least we can have Fry now. And she just said, yeah, we sure can.
We'll be right back. It's very powerful to me that this idea of this baby in basically the moment of breakup was so present for you. Like, how did you and your best friends really start putting that plan into action?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't long after that we started weekly meetings, sometimes more often. So yeah, I mean, I was sort of moving through my grief, metabolizing, processing, spending a lot of time in a very dark room covered with lots and lots of blankets, thinking about, but ultimately not adopting a dog. Like I was like planning on running a marathon, but never did it.
Classic,
I would do the classic
bleach your
breakup
hair.
stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, like like full Britney 2006,
Totally.
But it was within a year we really started talking, and it was first we would meet weekly and just talk about what we wanted. What does our family look like? Do we want to adopt? Do we want to do IVF? Do we want a turkey baster? Like what? There are all these different options. We had a lot of queer friends who were doing different things with different people. What legal structures do we need to all be protected?
So many questions, yeah.
And it was ultimately just about. It initially just started talking about what was essential for all of us, right? And so I obviously am going to be a non-gestational parent. My best friend does not want to be pregnant. Her partner is agnostic, kind of wants to.
Okay.
In all of these conversations, we all had very complex feelings about adoption and IVF, using a surrogate. Like there's no thing that is like, you just feel like, oh, that's totally ethically awesome,
Totally. And so where did you land as you were having these meetings, which, by the way, I will just note, maybe some, I'm thinking about my parents. They're a straight couple. I am positive they did not have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting discussing these things. And if they did, they can let me know when they hear this episode. But this, to me, feels unique.
For sure. Yeah, so, our intention with this was that we knew that we would be in conflict when parenting. And so this was almost about building the muscle memory, building the practice of having these hard conversations before there's a living child who is going to have to deal with our bullshit, our own, like, are we avoidant? And so it was like we were just practicing being non-avoidant with each other, I can remember – I was happy. I did not need to be the bio dad. If we were adopting, whatever, if they were going to do whatever, I was just like happy to be a parent.
Sure.
My best friend is a woman of color. And so it was really important for her and her partner is white. So it was really important for her to not have a white baby, to have a baby that reflected her own ethnicity, in a way so that she could share that with the child.
Sure.
And so that she would not have this horrific experience of being around with a white child and not being perceived as being the parent. And that was like one of her deal breakers, that she didn't want to be, co-parenting with two white parents with a white child, that would just be too overwhelming for her and her experience of the one time she gets to be a parent in her life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in terms of the other sort of almost like logistics of it, did you land on stuff like where would the baby live, for example? Did you talk about that? Yeah,
oh my goodness, did we talk about that, right? Like, I think our ideal goal was like a full 50-50 where we would pick an apartment building together and get apartments in the same building. And, the kid could go back and forth between them and we would all be present for family dinner every night. And that was the dream. And it, with real intention, like we all kind of wanted our family to look like that.
Yeah. I mean, God, but it sounds like a dream to live in the same building as your friend and her partner and have Fry sort of run up or down the stairs when they're able to. I mean, it's just to have family dinner. It's a utopia. I mean, you used that word before, but it's a beautiful vision of the future. I'm going to ask too, just because you were meeting so much, I feel like you might have hashed this out too. Like, can I ask you, like, in these many meetings, did the three of you disagree on anything? Was there anything that was sort of a friction point?
It definitely brought up difficult. Nothing makes you consider your own childhood and your own relationship to your parents and the traumas of how you were or were not treated in the ways that you wanted as a kid, like having kids yourself.
Or thinking. I mean, you hadn't had, but
the process. But the process, that intentional of sitting around like, so yeah, I'll just speak for myself. I have a lot of abandonment issues. And so we would have a whole meeting to just talk about our fears. It was my best friend's partner's idea, and to bring up those deepest, darkest fears that we were afraid of talking about. And so we were trying to practice doing that with each other, and my fear of just it all going away. I just spoke about like, I'm afraid of turning my back and all of this is just not going to be real anymore.
So the three of you had been talking through the many logistics of having a kid, talking out your fears. Can you tell me when you decided how you were going to make this baby?
Yeah, so, it was a Sunday, and we pretty much met every Sunday at that point. And, we're lying on a blanket in the park, and I think my best friend's partner says, well, do you want to ask him? And they just said, would you want to be the sperm donor? And I definitely had to that had not been on the menu.
I was going to say, was this the first?
It just had not been something we'd ever talked about.
It's interesting to me that this had not been on the menu because the three of you, you are the one who can make sperm, right? So this hadn't been an option, you donating sperm before?
I think I didn't let myself think about it.
Huh.
I think I didn't. I didn't bring it up. I was very deferential. Because I didn't, it's like they have a lot more financial security than me, or at least enough that they can invest in IVF if they need to.
Sure.
And they're sort of doing a lot of those logistical things. They obviously—
one of them is going to carry the baby.
One of them is going to carry. So I do not want to overstep.
Gotcha.
What happened ultimately was I only let myself want it when I felt like I could have it. I couldn't admit to myself that I wanted to be the biological father of the child. I could not, because if I wanted it and that wasn't the orientation that we ended up going with, I didn't want to feel disappointed.
You didn't want to feel
in my own path to parenthood. And so I think I didn't bring it up to myself even. I didn't even interrogate myself about, do you want to be the bio dad? Because I just felt lucky to be there. I felt lucky to be a dad at all.
But then in this moment,
on that blanket, they asked me, and the idea was that so I would be the sperm donor, and my best friend would donate the egg, and her partner would carry the baby.
You were donating the sperm. Your best friend was donating the egg, and then the best friend's partner was carrying the baby.
Exactly. So it would somehow magically, biologically, I'm immediately thinking like a biologist, right? Where I'm like, well, you might think that my best friend's partner doesn't have a biological tie to the child because of the genetics, but that's not true because the hormonal environment in the womb has a huge biological impact on the child.
All three of you are involved in these physical, to use a layperson's term, ways, right? Like it's your best friend providing the egg, you providing the sperm. So then the identity piece that it sounds like was so important to your best friend, being the baby being of color, that will happen.
That's right.
Then her partner will carry the child. So all three of you are involved.
It felt like it unlocked in something that I couldn't admit to myself that I wanted, that this type of relationship to the kid. And I think if my fear was feeling like, poof, it could all go away, well, if I'm the kid's bio dad, that is a tie that makes it harder for it to poof all go away. And I think this is one of the things about parenthood that we want so bad, and maybe why we want kids so bad, is like, if I have a kid, that's a relationship that can never poof go away. Like that I'm going to be that kid's parent for forever, but I think that ultimately is almost like a myth as well, because as a parent, you might want to hang on to different versions of your kid, but ultimately you have to let them go as well and become their own self. And so there's this tension, this push-pull between that desire to be needed, to be wanted, to have that tie that cannot break, that intimacy, that connection that is indelible, that is just as solid as the ground underneath us, another person, in another person. And I think that being the bio dad made me feel like I would have that type of connection with our kid.
It felt permanent.
It felt permanent.
Stay with us. After all this planning, the process begins.
Oh, it does.
When you actually start trying for this baby, what does that look like for the three of you?
Yeah, so in IVF, it was my job first. Like I am in doctor's offices. I am jerking off into a cup, in a really brightly lit doctor's office in a tiny little room that has a toilet in it for some reason that I still do not understand. I had to give one sample that was just to check genetics, and then another to go a freeze test, and then another. And my best friend is coming with me to all the appointments. We are still meeting all the time.
Okay.
And then I come out of the room and I give her a high five. And she's like, and then she looks at her hand and she's like, ah, and I'm like, no, I jerk off with my left, and then I washed,
like that,
I washed my hands.
Okay, lefty.
And then, so we were all, my best friend really wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
In my part of the IVF process, and she was there all the time, and it was just after that, after I donated the sample and the sample got cleared, everything went quiet.
Communication between you and your best friend and her. Okay.
The fish fry group chat. It was literally our phones has this fry group chat, and it's just quiet.
How does that make you feel? What do you think is happening?
I'm just my mind is going a mile a minute. I'm a very anxious person, and I'm just thinking about all of it. They are because they're gonna be pregnant soon, and so they're doing a lot of travel to sort of get as much travel in as possible before they can do the implantations. They're sort of ramping up to do this. Sperm donation is kind of humiliating, but the injections and stuff for extraction and implantation are really tough on your body. And so I'm sort of empathizing. They're just really, gearing up to do what is my work is done. Sure. And so,
they're giving them space.
They're taking space.
Yeah.
And it's totally fine for them to take space. I was in therapy for a lot of years learning that just because someone is taking space doesn't mean that
the worst thing's happening. Right.
Does not mean that the worst thing is happening.
Uh-huh. And when did they get back in touch?
It was maybe a couple months later. I was really, trying to stop myself from fearing some massive shift. And then I get a text, on the group chat that just said we should talk.
What do they say to you?
It was just that my best friend's partner wanted to be the egg donor.
Okay.
And that meant that if I were the sperm donor, the two of us are white. And so our kid would be white. Again, I think, my best friend wanted to have a baby who's a person of color because she gets to be a parent once. That is her parenthood experience. And her partner gets to be a parent once, and they didn't know if they were ever going to have another kid. And she wanted to be the bio mom.
So when your best friend's partner says, I want to be the egg donor, you put these pieces together. That means what for you?
That means that I'm not going to be the sperm donor. And I think that's where bargaining came in, and I immediately started saying, well, I never needed to be the bio dad. But what ultimately happened was they also, they didn't want to use a sperm bank either. So we had spent so many years discussing all this that I already knew the math.
You knew the math. Well, what does that mean? If you weren't going to be the sperm donor and they didn't want to use a sperm bank, then what did they tell you was the plan, the next step for them?
They were talking to another friend, and they had already begun talking to that friend about sperm donation. And so I was outside of this process that I had been not outside of ever.
But oh my God. I mean, this is, everything was coming together. These things you hadn't even allowed yourself to hope for, being a bio dad, happening. then there's silence, and then they tell you basically that they're moving forward, not with your sperm, but with a different donor who it sounds like you even know. And I'm not even talking about that other donor. That's really not where I want to put the focus. I'm just saying, like, this arrangement, God, I mean, that must have been devastating. What was the emotional response for you?
I at first was just trying so hard to not put pressure. I was just holding back because I didn't want to feel manipulative. I didn't want to say, you guys, we've been doing this for so long and I want this so bad. Like I said on that conversation that this is like a space shuttle launch where like we all have to put our keys in and turn them. Like we are
you said that?
Yeah, like if anyone does not feel enthusiastically like they can turn their key on having a kid in this way, we can't do it.
Oh, I feel like if I were in your position, I'm a much more selfish person and I would just be devastated. I'd be like, the ugliest part of me would be like, what do you mean? I mean, I love you, but this is me again, the ugliest part of myself. We've been talking about this since we were 18, like not me being the bio dad, but my gosh, I mean, was there some ugly part of you that was like screaming and crying and throwing a fit?
Not for a long time. And I think that part did ultimately need to come out, but it goes all the way back to my childhood and how the only emotion men were allowed was anger. And I did not ever want to be that. And I felt like I was talking to myself, like her experience of not being the bio mom mirrored my experience of getting to be the bio dad. And I could not be angry. I understood her.
Because you got it, yeah.
I got it.
Did any part of you think that some part of this plan could be saved? Like, even if they went with a different sperm donor, maybe you could be involved in the kid's life in some way? Like, was any part of this plan you'd worked so hard on salvageable?
Oh, they had to, I became, it's not that I wasn't involved, it's just that there was a fourth person involved.
Sure, the other sperm donor.
And, if three is company, four is a crowd. And my needs were, not as important as his to figure out if he wanted to be involved as a parent.
Right.
And so, ultimately and that was one of the hard things to navigate because I did still want to co-parent.
You wanted to still be a co-parent.
Yeah. But
it's so much more complicated now, though.
Exactly. It's so much more complicated. And, I think they then had to go figure out a lot of stuff that they did have to figure out on their own, that I was not key to those decisions about their new sperm donor and what role he was going to play. And we all, I think, were just all of those conversations that we had to practice talking about the hard thing. We tried. And it wasn't enough. It was like a bubble that popped, but I had nothing to hold in my hands. I had no roadmap for even the type of grief that I was feeling because most, I don't know how most other people feel about almost having a kid. And in part because most people don't talk about that. Like most stories about wanting a kid end with having a kid. And I was just like, but I have nothing. I have nothing to hold on to in this whole experience of loss.
Well, I mean, you're articulating something very true and very tricky because, when we hear stories about someone, I mean, infertility, for example, is absolutely something people struggle with. People aren't able to have kids in the way they want to have kids for so many reasons. But because the three of you, your best friend, her partner, were sort of charting this, this non-traditional, non-nuclear family structure, there was no roadmap for that family. You were building it. But then also, as you say, there was no roadmap for the loss. This grief was probably even difficult to share with other people to get them to understand.
Yeah.
Were you there for the birth of your best friend and her partner's baby?
No, I was actually traveling for work when they had their kid, and it was really hard for me to go visit them after the birth. It took many months, and that was really painful for them. And it.
I mean, I just want to be really clear, like, You are not a co-parent to this child.
No.
Right?
No.
You are not involved in this child's life in the way that, those meetings you'd planned. This is not Fry. This is not the baby you and your best friend had talked about at 18. This is a different baby.
This is a different baby, yep. And so it took a long time. I think all those feelings that I wouldn't let come out were stopping me from the genuine joy of being an uncle. I think grief, one of the funny things that grief did is, and it did steal that joy. It did steal the joy of being able to be present for my friends and experience this huge life transition that they had. I would get up and be like, I'm going to see them and I physically could not do it.
Do you still want to be a parent?
I'll never move on from wanting to be a parent. Not ever. I think one thing that Americans are really bad at dealing with is that life is inherently melancholy.
That Americans are bad. Like the French people, they've really got it. Yeah.
French people understand ennui, man. You know what I mean? It's like you get one life and you get to be a parent or you don't. And both of those are really hard, And I'm just in a place of accepting that I'm a person who's always wanted to be a parent who probably never will be. And that doesn't mean that I can't nurture and nourish young people. And a couple of my best friends have kids. And it's really important for me to be an adult who listens to them and who shows up for them and who cooks for them. I've made pasta dough with my other best friend's kid. I've had that. I was going to
ask that. Yeah.
I've had that moment, and it was, she loved the feeling of the dough so much she hugged it. Oh. And I have a picture of her hugging the pasta dough.
Wow.
It was more joy than my body could handle. And, and so being a parent is so isolating socially also. And so trying my best to show up for the parents in my life. So, it's not just about the kids. It's also can you make parenthood a little less lonely for the parents in your life? I've started to view that as a role that I can play that's really important to me.
Yeah. I mean, it strikes me that you had this very specific idea of what it meant to be a parent when you were younger. And at this stage, you've really sort of expanded, maybe not your notion of being a parent, but this idea of care and nurturing that was your deep desire, right? As a kid, and you are doing that, but in a very different way than you imagined. But you said something that I think will resonate with a lot of people, which is you said, I'm a person who will always want to be a parent who won't be a parent. What did you say?
I've always wanted to be a parent, and I will always want to be a parent, and I probably won't be. And that is the material truth of my life. And in the time when I was so desperate to undo the loss of the time when I thought I was going to be a parent, I couldn't accept that. I couldn't accept how fucking sad that made me. And now I'm in a place where I can accept it.
Your relationship to your best friend, you two, what is it like now?
Yeah, I personally my fear was never losing her. Not ever. I just felt like we had been through so much. Like we were life partners. To me, we were. That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. I mean, there's been a lot of repair that has been necessary. And I think that is going to be another lifelong journey. We're still very close, and I think we're going to spend our life nurturing one another and still being more present for one another and the families that we each build.
I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, throughout this conversation, I'm thinking that there are so many ways to make a family, and every single one of them is so hard. Is that
so hard?
Is that the takeaway of all this? It's like any route you choose is just like, it's hard.
It's like fucking impossible.
It's impossible.
It is unbelievable how it's just, and it's so emotionally fraught because it brings up so much stuff from our childhood, our family. Everyone has trauma.
I am getting so stressed. You know what we have to do to end this interview? We have to do the Lamaze breathing.
I mean, clearly, it's the only way out.
Okay, all this family talk, everything's stressful. Okay, I'm going to do it with you. Lead me through it.
We'll do a he, who.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
He, who.
I want to do it one more time because I think I kind of messed up the he. Okay, ready?
Okay.
One more time. I feel calmer.
I actually feel better. I legitimately do. Yeah.
Joe, we got to end on a high note. Thank you so much for this conversation.
It's been a delight. Thank you a lot.
The Modern Love team is Davis Land, Elisa Gutierrez, Lynn Levy, Reva Goldberg, and Sarah Curtis. This episode was produced by Reva Goldberg. It was edited by Lynn Levy and Davis Land. Our mix engineer was Daniel Ramirez. Original music in this episode by Alicia Baitup, Marian Lozano, Pat McCusker, and Dan Powell. Dan also composed our theme music. The Modern Love column is edited by Daniel Jones, and Mia Lee is the editor of Modern Love Projects. If you'd like to submit an essay or a tiny love story to the New York Times, we have the instructions in our show notes. I'm Anna Martin. Thanks for listening.